Hello everybody, this is Natalie here. How are you? First of all, this is not a sponsored Lego video. I just came across these flowers. I haven't done Lego in such a long time that I just needed to grab it and do something that has very clear instructions, that I don't have to creatively come up with something. I know that people like to crochet. I think it's the same thing, is you're being creative, but you're also not. So it's a kind of a relaxing thing to do. But today we're going to look at something that causes a lot of art blocks. It's Sunday, I'm in the garden. It's a sunny, beautiful day. But this is as real as it gets, so there will be neighbors, there will be dogs, there will be airplanes, there will be stuff in the background that you're going to hear. But today, we will talk about being lost in your art style. I know that's a problem that quite a lot of us face here and there. You know, when it happens to you that you suddenly realize that, I don't know, the creative flame is gone. It's a little bit chilly in the creative house. Got a little cold, and you're not very motivated to do anything just because you really don't know what to draw. Nothing really feels like it's yours anymore. You know what I mean? That it doesn't feel like you. It's kind of like you're watching yourself, but the outcome is sort of alienated to you. And as an artist, there is more to it. If we are talking about personal style, there's just more to it. It's not just finding your style. It's more like a journey to find yourself. So I think there's also that kind of mystical part to it where you discover yourself. It's all a big journey and it's never ending, but sometimes there's a little bit that kind of dark night of the soul where, yeah, you feel a little lost. And I don't know if you're in school anymore, in art school or university or wherever you are on your journey, but especially in your 20s, the thing that you hear the most is,
well, just be yourself and everything will be okay.
And I remember that the whole be yourself thing made me really insecure, at some point even mad, because in your 20s, I mean, how the F are you supposed to know who you are in your 20s? You don't know. You have a sense or a feeling, but you don't have that kind of life experience where you're absolutely sure this is you, this is your style. And I mean, even in my 30s right now, I find myself changing. So I have that realistic style and I have that cute, more abstract style. And yeah, I find myself in the midst of change where I know change is constantly there. You know, the only constant thing there is change, blah, blah, you know that. But I feel like I have to let go of part of my artistic ego, so to say, because the realistic style is what brought me a lot of praise when I was a kid and teenager. It takes hard work. It's hard to copy. With, you know, the more cute, I want to say kawaii style. It's what I always loved and admired. And I know that there's real hard work in making things simple and abstract. I have grown up with that Sanrio characters, you know, Keroppi and of course Hello Kitty and everyone, the twins. I'm so bad with the names of the characters, but my big gig was Keroppi. I still have a ton of things from my childhood that I dearly love, and it's really, really, really simple. But I have to say that my surroundings in my childhood and even in the teenage years, they weren't much in love with the style. So there weren't any other kids that were especially in love with, you know, Japanese culture or the language. So as that kind of people-pleasing, highly sensitive person that I am and the empath, I stayed away from even considering taking the path of cute. The path of cute. It's like an epic series of little cute characters that have adventures in finding themselves. Now on Netflix, The Path of Cute. If you're working hard on finding your style, you might think that you need art school. And I just want to throw that in here before we get into the 8 points or the 8 pointers, the 8 tips that I want to give you if you find yourself in a rut. But I want to have my 2-minute rant here about art schools or art uni or whatever you might call it, a bachelor. I would say be very mindful, very choosy, and very careful where you go to. Because bad teachers judge you on their own personal preferences and expectations. And that really messed with me. I want to say it partly messed me up. It gave me a little tiny or not so tiny creative trauma, a mini trauma, because at the time when I was studying, I was in the master's class, and my final project of the year, my finishing final, whatever you call that for graduation, that kind of project, that was a book project, and it was highly illustrated. So it was a picture book that at the time I was doing puppet theater with like life-sized puppets, and the characters that were in that play, I wanted to make a picture book about them. It's very dark humor, Viennese humor, I want to say, with typical Viennese people. The teacher in the first meeting for this book showed me another book that another student had done some years before me that actually won a prize, an award. It was highly focused on typography, and it was just very different from what I had in mind. But the teacher, in their minds, had the expectation that they wanted a finished book that could win an award. So that she set me up for something that I wasn't going for. I just wanted to have that picture book for the fans of the puppet play, which was very niche, but I knew what I was going for, and her expectations and my final goal were not on the same page. So she did not like my work. And that was grueling. It was gruesome. It was devastating because I had to redo every single page. So from these huge, very tedious, meticulous, detailed illustrations, that was not digital, by the way. It was traditional illustration, mixed media. I had to do every page again and again and again, 7 versions at least from every page, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I knew after 3 or 4 months that I wasn't going to finish the book. And I became so insecure in my own style and my own ability to produce good work that I eventually dropped out of class. And I took a year off and not doing any art whatsoever. And I retook that year with different teachers, winning an award, by the way, with my project, which at the time was the Vanillary Garden, which is now the Moonshadow Garden. But that on the side. So it's very dependent on the criticism that you get from your teachers. It's also dependent on the personal, I want to say, ripeness, the personal development of your teachers. So I would be I will look into who your teachers are on that school. But that said, at the time, I was very young. I was in my early 20s, and I was way too young to be secure enough to stand up against that kind of criticism. Yeah, be very picky, be very choosy with your art school, because you don't really need it. I want to say everything is on the internet these days. So the only thing where I would say you need art school for is if you want some artsy friends and some vitamin C as in connection, which you will find there. I know I gained one of my best friends there. Hi, Leni, if you're watching and listening. which I wouldn't trade for in a million years. It's very important. But as for skills alone, there's the internet today. And yeah, let's get into the 8 points that I want to give you if you find yourself in a rut, if you find yourself lost with your art. Number one is, if you're lost, that's actually a good thing. I know you might hate me for saying that, but I want to say you're onto something, because you're asking yourself the really important questions. Like, is your work original? Do you even love what you're loving at the moment? Or is it just being influenced by people around you? You create an art style because you like the artist or the people around you, So you're not just copying someone just because you don't know what else to do. You are developing your own taste, your own style. And that is the first very important ingredient in being good as a creative, as an artist, is you have to have good taste. There's always this kind of gap between what you're envisioning for your own art and then what it finally gets to be. So what I have in my head and what's then on the paper or on the screen is never ever the same thing. But you are asking yourself the very important questions that are there to help you gain that great taste, that palette of yours. Number 2, and this goes along with number 1. Sorry, I'm too close to the mic here. So number 2 ties into number 1. If you're asking yourself all these brilliant questions that do shaken your self-esteem, I want to say don't overthink it. There's a brilliant podcast by Andy J. Pizza. It's called The Creative Pep Talk. I will link it down in the description. He basically says, if you're thinking it's taking more time of your day, of your creative time, than you're doing. If you're thinking more than you're doing, then something is wrong. Oh no! And I know that I'm personally a scatterbrain. I think a lot. And I know that, especially in my family, thinking, knowledge, intelligence was always held up very high. You never go somewhere without a plan. I started playing Trivial Pursuit when I was 5 years old with my mother, and I probably lost for the first 10 years of playing that game against her. Knowledge is important, and the way I see the difference between an amateur and a professional is that the professional has an idea about how much he doesn't know, whereas the amateur is sort of dibbling with the idea, but doesn't really have a sense for the vastness of the field that he's getting into. So as a professional, sometimes your security, your inner self-secureness, that is not a word I know. Your self-esteem kind of crumbles the more you get into the field, because you just realize that there is so much more out there and that there's so much more to the creative process and the inspiration and everything than you initially thought. If you stare into the void for too long, don't overthink it. Come back out of that hole. Come on. So how do you get back out of that hole of overthinking? That is actually point number 3, and it's sometimes the hardest. It's it's the hardest, but it's the simplest. Is you have to make a ton of crappy work, like really a sheepy load of really, really bad work. You know that I love Seth Godin. And if you don't know who Seth Godin is, I will link him in the description. If you want to learn anything about marketing in a fun way and in a way that is insightful and clever and intelligent, you know Seth Godin. You have to have a knowledge of who he is. But he said that the people with really good ideas, the people who have good ideas, have a ton of really, really bad ideas. The other example that I like to take here is if you're a photographer or if you like to take photos, you know that out of 1,000 photos, 1,000 pics that you took, only 1 or maybe 10 if you're really lucky are really good. That's a huge number. But you're really lucky if you have 1,000 and there's 1 really good in there. That's a good statistic. But if you look at that from the point of view of an artist, and especially with the kind of need to be productive on Instagram and posting every day and, you know, keep the algorithm happy, you expect that every single piece that you post has to be top notch, has to be up there, and you're creating so much pressure for yourself that even that thing alone can lead to that kind of artistic anxiety freeze response where you're not posting anything for weeks and weeks, which if you're following me on Instagram, that's maybe something you noticed that I'm just gone. Yeah, that's an anxiety freeze response, or it's just that I have a ton of client work. But yeah, I know that that kind of pressure can lead to me running away from my own creative practice. The other point that I want to add to the make a ton of crappy work thing is if you read The Artist's Way, the book by Julia Cameron, she talks about the morning pages, which is sort of just getting the rusty water out of your creative pipes before the clear water comes. You know that if you enter an old house, an old building, you want to have some fresh water. And the first 2 minutes is just brown water coming out. This is the crappy work that you have to get done first. So if you're not a writer and you don't want to, write morning pages, I would say turn it into morning scribbles and take out your worst sketchbook, the one where you literally don't have any expectation on yourself other than filling pages. So take the cheap one, because I know you don't want to waste any art material and use the really expensive one, the Strathmore or I don't know, the Blender. Take a really cheap one from the dollar store and just fill 3 pages with scribbles. Just do it. Before you do anything else, before you ask yourself any questions, nothing, just do it.
But now.
And now we're going to go to point number 4, which we've touched on in the intro for a little bit here, is, be careful who you listen to. Teachers, friends, colleagues, other creatives in the fields, and there is a ton of gatekeeping. Either from people in the industry who don't want more competition because you're the newbie on the field, or they have a clientele that's established, but they're losing clients to other creatives. And so there's this anxiety of survival coming up for them. So they will maybe criticize you or give you advice that's really bad advice. Trust your gut feeling. When something really sounds weird, I would say maybe don't listen to it if it doesn't feel uplifting. So there's the gatekeeping in the industry, or it's maybe a teacher or other people who never followed their calling or never really reached their goal, so to say. They never stepped into the ring of being criticized themselves or worked through that kind of criticism, so they end up being frustrated and they give out frustrating advice. I know that sometimes some advice can be hard to hear, but essentially that a part of you tells you, well, I know it's kind of true. Like if someone tells you you should be doing more, should be working more. If you could do more, but you lose yourself in Garden Story on the Switch. I see you. Stop playing games. Stop distracting yourself from being worried that you never will find your art style. We're getting you through that. So someone tells you that if you have time for TV, you have time for illustration and a creative practice. It might be true. I have been called out on that. And it is hard to hear. It's hard to swallow. But yeah, it's kind of true. But it feels like gatekeeping. Like if someone keeps you from getting a job or getting clients, or if they just, mess with your style too much. Yeah. That would be, yeah. You need your self-esteem. Protect it. And apropos self-esteem, there is my tip number 5. Find a group of friendly creators. Some art friends, you know. I know that I've told you that before. I grew up as an outsider. I didn't have art friends for a very, very, very long time. And even now in the flesh, I sort of miss them. But with the internet or Instagram, it's kind of easy, you know, to join a group, to ask around and get added to a group or even make your own group. I mean, it's important to talk to people. So I know that Cheyenne Barton and For a Little Peach and all the big ones, they have a Discord with a ton of followers and other creative peeps where you can just, you know, ask around whoever wants an Instagram group so that you can get to know each other, find each other's, find others who really get you and get it, whatever it is that you're doing. And you push each other through the hard times. You know, it's my favorite group, I'm still grieving, was, I know that the administrator didn't want to do the work anymore. And so it kind of disassembled for a moment here. So yeah, maybe I'm just, you know, making my own group soon again, just to listen to my own tips here. But yeah, all hail and great thanks to the big internet. Maybe we will see each other soon in one of the creative groups out there so we can help each other along. And now let's go to point number 6, which I briefly talked about as a criticism that I received, but it's valid and it's important, is have a practice set in place. So if you show up even when you're not inspired, that's a big deal. It's important. Don't let your brain talk you out of being creative. So make stuff always, constantly. 3 morning pages, right? And then see what you get from it. The only exception to this is if you have a burnout. This means that your creative house was on fire and you need to rebuild first. You need to, you know, focus on other things like getting your nutritional supplies ready and have your blood work checked and, you know, talking to a therapist and maybe even changing your creative practice around so that you don't burn the candle on both ends, because, you know, that's not healthy. But the creative practice in itself is such an important anchor in your daily life. I want to say it's the prayer of the creative is to have at least, I want to say, half an hour a day where you just show up continuously at your workspace and you do something. It doesn't matter if you think it's good or not, but something will come off from it. It's like you have the creative muse living on your desk and you're dating her and you only show up, I don't know, once a month or every 2 months. I mean, that girl will not be happy with you. She won't give you any good ideas. She won't let you in on the good side, the good ideas. But you need to have a ton of bad ideas first. You need to romance her, bring her creative flowers every day so that she can, you know, be fancy and kind of take a deeper look at you on the creative Tinder and make her swipe right or left. I don't know. I never was on Tinder. I think you swipe right if you like someone. I'm not sure. But yeah, make the muse swipe right, I want to say. Number 7. Look at your influences. It's kind of tied together with number 8 then, but look at your influences. If you are completely out of it, you have to fall in love again. Not just make the muse fall in love with you, but you have to make yourself fall in love again with art. You know, what made you love art in the first place? What made you love a certain style, certain artists, certain color combinations? What was it? Go back, look at it, make a Pinterest board. Don't overthink it, you know, no judgment towards your art whatsoever. You're just looking at other people's work, but you're not copying it. I know copying in the private, like there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can still copy something just to learn maybe a new technique, but I don't need to tell you, you can't put it on the internet and sell it or whatever, or at least mention people if you're inspired by them. But that being said, that's a really short one. I want you to fall in love again. Get out your personal creative art Tinder and swipey. Is there creative app there? I think there should be, right? And number 8, the final point that we will look at is what's your unique combo. So first of all, I want to look at what you love, and not just art-wise. What's your specific combo? What's the things that you love outside of art that make you you? Are you into curly dogs and next then you're into vegetables with unique colors? Like, you know, there are blue carrots and purple potatoes. Are you aware of that? You should Google it. And you should eat them. They're really good. I'm going in a side tangent here. That's my ADHD, maybe. The carrots, initially, they were either yellow or purple or brown. But it was just for the Netherlands, the king there, that they sort of grew orange carrots. And that are the ones that stayed. So this is why we have orange carrots. Little side note. And also, I don't know why we have yellow potatoes. But the initial ones, they were kind of blue and purple potatoes. Are you into colorful vegetables? Do you like ASMR? Do you like soda pop labels? And how can you bring all of that together in a composition? How can you mix that up? Can you invite a soda pop illustration with, I don't know, curly shampoo dogs and film your creative process as an ASMR? I don't know. I'm just giving you ideas here, you know? So these are the 8 points. Let's just run them back through for a minute here. Grabbing notes. Okay, so number 1 is, if you're lost, that's a good thing. You're developing your taste. Number 2 is, don't overthink it. Just do. Number 3 is, make a ton of crappy work. Like, really do a lot. Get some output. And number 4 is, be careful who you listen to. Don't listen to the gatekeepers, people. Don't. Number 5 is, join a group of friendly creators. Get some art friends and help each other out. Number 6 is, have a creative practice in place. You want to make it easy for yourself. Have a nice place that's always clean up. Get yourself some tea and make it easy for you. Number 7 is, look at your influences and fall in love again with other artists, other art. What made you love art in the first place? And number 8 is, what's your unique combo? Blue carrot person out there. So thank you so much for listening. I want to give a shout out to Lego here. Thanks so much for building this little set of flowers that I can put into the background of my studio where there's no sunlight. I really enjoyed making this thing. Maybe I'll buy another set so I can make another one. And thanks to you for watching and listening to this little ramble here. If you have any questions, if you want to tell me that you like this and you want to see more of it and hear more of these little tips, let me know. And we will talk to each other very soon. Bye-bye.